The Photography Explained podcast is supported by rickmcavoyphotography.com/courses. More at the end. How to take fewer photos but better photos in 2025 with my one photo rule. Hi, and a very warm welcome to episode 197, no less, of the Splendid Photography Explained podcast. I'm your host Rick, and in each episode I will try to explain one photographic thing to you in plain English in less than 27 minutes-ish without the irrelevant details. I am a professionally qualified photographer based in England with a lifetime of photographic experience which I share with you in my podcast. But before I go on, Happy New Year! Happy 2025! I would like to wish each and every one of you, dear listeners, all the best for 2025, and I hope that 2025 is an excellent year for all of us. Okay, I want to get straight into taking better photos, beginning with taking fewer photos. We could all take fewer photos and, in the process, take better photos, and in this episode, I am going to tell you how. How utterly splendid, eh? Yes, I'm picking up on episode 195, where I asked the question, why do I have so many rubbish photos? Okay, so first off, what is my one photo rule? Well, here is the answer bit from episode 152, how my one photo rule will help you take better photos, where I first discussed my one photo rule. And no, this isn't that episode repeated, there's lots of new stuff in here, okay? Now, this episode was released in March 2023, would you believe? How time flies, blimey. But I've got a lot more to say since that episode was published, so this is all good stuff. So here's the answer bit. Take one photo. When you are looking at something you want to photograph, take one photo. Do not take loads of photos from different angles and viewpoints. Do not take hundreds of photos and try to find a good one when you return home. Stop, think, look around and take the best one photo that you can, and then move on. Do this and you'll have fewer photos, and the photos that you take will be better. That was the answer bit. And this has to be a good thing, right? Okay, so that was then, and this is now. This is my one photo rule in 12 words. Yes, in 12 words. Take the time to take the best one photo of one thing. Now I'm going to repeat that. Take the time to take the best one photo of one thing. Okay, that's it, summed up in 12 words. But where did my one photo rule come from? Well, it came from a time many years ago when I was in a bad place with my photography. I was taking lots of photos, far too many, and I was taking photos of anything and everything. I was taking any paid work I could find, and I was basically all over the place. I didn't like the photos I was producing, and I was spending forever wading through rubbish photos trying to find something half decent. And I was also taking forever editing, always trying new things, new software, different techniques, and my Lightroom catalogue was a complete mess. I'd completely lost my way. I was at the point of giving up. See, I was working on photography being my full-time gig, and I'd put huge amounts of pressure on myself to achieve this. Photography stopped being a hobby. Photography became a burden, and the main cause of this was not thinking about what I was taking photos of. Yes, really, that was the main cause of all this anguish and grief. As I look back on this, I realised that this was a light bulb moment for me, and it was a very important moment, and it was actually a very good and very positive moment. I didn't know it at the time, of course I didn't, but this was the point at which I started to think about the photos that I was taking. And somewhere along the way, I decided to try and get just one new photo the next time I went out to take photos. That's where this thing started, and that has helped me to get to where I am now, happy with my photography. But I can look back now and tell you what I used to do and what I do now. So I'd like to explain what this looks like in reality. Let's start with sunrises. I love sunrises. I love being part of the moment and experiencing the start of a new day, which to me is a daily miracle and something to be celebrated. Many years ago, I would get up early and get out determined to capture the sunrise. I'd have all the gear with me, all properly prepped, and I was good to go. But other than that, I didn't have a plan other than to drive somewhere and take some fantastic photos because I'm a great photographer, aren't I? I don't need to prep, I don't need to find a great composition. No, they're just going to come to me, and if they don't, I'll keep on taking photos until I get something amazing. Yep, that was my thinking at the time. Now, I did have a rough idea where the sun was rising, but I think we all know that, don't we? But that was it. So I'd wander around capturing anything that I saw, never settling in one place, reacting to what I was seeing around me. But once the penny I mentioned before had dropped, I realised I needed to find one composition and get that one photo. So I started to do this instead. I started to plan where I was taking photos and planning what the composition was going to be. I even started plotting where the sun would rise, meaning that my starting point would be a well-composed, well-thought-out photo with the sun in a predetermined place. Yes, I was beginning the process of trying to get one photo, but there was one thing that I was still doing. I was taking a photo long before the sunrise, then lots more photos as the light changed, and then every step from the sun appearing over the horizon to a point where it was some way up in the sky. I could have 20, 30, 40, 50 photos of that sunrise. And let's not forget that I'm taking 3 photos using auto bracketing, so that's going to be what, 60, 90, 120, even 150 photos. And that's a lot of photos, isn't it? But which photo was I after? The one with the sun just clearing the horizon. Now, I'm not saying this is the photo that you should take, but that's the photo I'm after. That's the moment that I want. That's the moment I want to capture. That to me is sunrise. So all the other photos were a complete waste of my time. But I didn't delete them, did I? No, they're still there, and that's one for another time. And I love a beautiful sunset too, who doesn't? But I find sunrises are made for me and my photography. That's my photography time. Sunset, it's a much more social time, isn't it, of an evening? I love watching a sunset sat at a nice bar with my bestie, Mrs. M. So what do I do now when I'm photographing a sunrise? Well, I mentioned there's one moment I want to capture. There are actually 2 moments. One is before the sun rises with that spectacular pre-sunrise light, and one just after the sun has risen. Those are the 2 photos I want to capture, and no more. So if I can take 2 photos I'm happy with, I've nailed it. And that's my 1 photo rule. 2 moments I want to capture, 2 times I press the shutter button, 2 photos. I think that makes sense, doesn't it? I know I said 1 photo, but there's 2 different things I'm capturing. And there are other benefits to this for me. I'll have spent a lot more time enjoying that special sunrise moment, and the photo taking experience, as I planned what I was doing and knew what I needed to do, it made it so much better. So my sunrise photography experience has been transformed, and if I see something else I like the look of, I will take a photo of it. That's fine. I don't close my eyes to anything other than what I've captured. When I say 1 photo rule, I'm not saying you can only take 1 photo, but try to get 1 photo of 1 thing. That's the point of this. Okay, I'm going to move on to my second example, photographing buildings. Now, this is another practical example of what I used to do and what I do now. See, what I used to do was this. I'd take a photo of the front of a building, and then I'd take another one slightly to the left, bit more to the left, then to the right, up a bit, down a bit. You get the idea. And then I'd go back to the first shot and I'd take another one just to be sure. And then maybe I'd take another one to the left, and this could go on and on and on. I could take 10 to 20 photos of the front of a building, but I only needed 1 of them. And yeah, I'd bracket it again, so it's 3 times the trouble for me, isn't it? And then there's the other sides of the building, aren't there? There's the front, the back, the sides, and then there's the inside. So, yep, I'd repeat this painful process over and over. If I needed to provide 20 photos to a client, not an unusual number, I could easily take 200 or 300 photos and times that by 3, and that really is a lot of photos, isn't it? It's a lot of data, it's a lot of stuff on a hard drive. And it's a lot of photos to sort through, of course. Now, these days, if I need to provide 20 photos and I take, edit and issue 20 photos and the client's happy, I've nailed it. This usually starts with a shot list, so things become much more straightforward when I stick to this, which I should have been doing in the first place, shouldn't I? And if I see something not on the shot list that I like the look of, that's fine too. But that's the point. I'm not taking 10 photos of the same thing. I'm thinking about the one I'm taking and then moving on. So this is the point. There are two completely different scenarios, sunrises and commercial work, but the same problem with the same outcome. I could give you many more examples, but they all amount to the same, so I don't need to, do I? Why was I taking so many photos? Well, a lack of confidence, a perceived lack of technical ability, I'll explain perceived in a minute, and a level of insecurity, I guess, and a big dose of imposter syndrome. I used to ask myself, who am I to take these photos? Other people take professional photos, not me. I'm not a real photographer. What am I thinking? I wasn't confident enough in my ability to get a single image I needed, so I covered all the angles, hoping there'd be something good in there somewhere. I was also using different camera settings, which compounded the problem even further. And this created additional pressure because I didn't know what I was doing and never knew if I captured what I needed, so it was a lose-lose situation for me. Well, that's what I thought anyway. The reality is somewhat different. And there's another factor in all of this. I could take as many photos as I wanted to because digital photography allows us to do just this, doesn't it? Take lots of photos. Not just good photos, great photos, amazing photos, but photos of any standard, any amount, any time, with virtually no consequence. Right, that's the why. Let's move on a bit. A question you might have, dear listener. What if I'm not confident only taking one photo? Then take more than one photo, but aim to get the best one photo every time you take a photo. If you have that intention in mind when you start, you will likely take fewer photos anyway, and the photos you take will probably be better. But try to take a single photo and see how you feel about it. You might just enjoy the experience like I did. See, it's a great aim just to take one photo, but don't beat yourself up if you don't. Just apply the principles of what I'm saying and see how it goes, and just give it time. It's not an immediate thing. You're not going to listen to this and say, right, I'm only going to go out and take one photo. It's not going to happen. I get that. Just use what I'm telling you and learn from it. Okay, the next related question, dear listener. What if I want to wander around taking photos of things that I see because I love doing this? Then do it and enjoy it. Just enjoy it. But remember, you'll probably end up with loads of average at best photos. Well, you might end up with hundreds of amazing photos, and if you do, let me know how you did it. But if you're taking lots of photos, be honest with yourself. If something's rubbish, say it's rubbish and get rid of it. Get rid of the stuff you'll never do anything with, as it only builds up and causes problems later, which will be another episode all of its own where I explain the problem that I've been left with. Right, the talky bit. Just think about what you're taking photos of, and you will start to take better photos. This costs you nothing other than time, and once you start walking around looking and thinking, you may well start to see things differently and start to see things you haven't seen before. And there is an irony to all of this, certainly in my case. The first photo I took was normally the photo that I'd used, and I guess that 95% of the time, that first photo was all that I ever needed anyway. Now, I might not have had the confidence, but it turns out I did have the eye and the technical ability to spot a good composition. It's just unfortunate that I didn't seem to know it at the time. That's worth a think, isn't it? No, all those other photos I took, they were a waste of time, both in the time taken to take the photos and in the sorting and editing process. See, I hate sorting photos, and sorting lots of similar photos is at the worst end of the sorting photo scale. If I've taken 10 photos of each part of a building, I've loads of photos to go through to try and find the good one, if there's one in there, that is. And I could have saved myself all that time by just thinking about what I was capturing at the time. That is the point. But I do completely acknowledge this was part of my learning process, and I wouldn't be where I am today without going through this process and those horrible moments where I was hating photography. But I hope what I'm telling you in this episode will help you on your photographic journey. Big disclaimer here, my one photo rule. It's not new, far from it, and I never claimed it was. It is what we used to do back in the film camera days, the days before digital images, well, before digital anything, and also the days before social media. Can you even imagine that? Back then, every photo cost money, so we would try to get the very best photo every time. We had to think about every photo we took because every photo cost money, both for the film and also the printing. And you were limited to how much film you had. Imagine if you could only take 24 or 36 photos. Now, how would you feel about that? With a digital camera, we're constrained by the size of our memory cards, which makes the number of photos we're able to capture and record virtually limitless. So no, it's not new. It's a tried and tested technique from old school photography days, and it's one that is still practiced by professional photographers all over the world today. It's just common sense and it's good practice. Okay, let's talking of common sense and good practice. What if I use a phone to take photos? Well, you can still try to get one photo. Give it a go, see what happens. I know it's so easy to take photos with phones without much thought, if any. At least with a camera, there is a conscious, deliberate act of taking a photo. But there's no reason why you can't adopt the one photo rule if you take photos with a phone. There's no reason at all. I must try it myself. I just checked my camera roll, actually, thinking about this, and I got 18,480 photos. That's not a badge of honour. That's a shock admission. And a lot of that's going to be rubbish, isn't it? So I'm going to have to do something about that, which is an excellent idea for a future episode. I need some time to work out how I'm going to deal with this, though. Okay, what do? Well, I love my photography these days. I love going out with the intention of getting one photo that I can put in a portfolio. That's what I'm after. One photo that is better than all the other photos in one of my 3 portfolios. Yes, dear listener, I have 3 portfolios and they cover my architectural photography, my travel photography and my landscape photography. The photos in these portfolios, these are my favourite photos, and these collections, they actually mean a lot to me. I love them to bits. Each portfolio, it's got 12 photos, which are the best photos I've created. So when taking photos, I aim to get one photo that can replace a photo in one of my portfolios. And I know this will not happen every time, of course it won't, but I still love trying. And I do take more than one photo, I want to be clear about that. But every photo that I take has thought behind it. And my starting point to taking photos is to use my 3 photography superpowers. And they are walking around, looking and thinking. Yes, really. These are the 3 superpowers that I deploy every time I go out to take photos. See, what I'm looking for is an interesting, well-balanced composition, one that I will enjoy editing and publishing. And this is where I spend my time, in the walking and looking and thinking. This is where I really spend time, because at the end of the day, I want one photo to replace another in a portfolio. I don't want 100 photos to go home and try and find a good one with. I don't want to do that anymore, and I don't do it anymore, and life is much better for me for doing so. As to the technical side, that's all sorted, so I don't need to worry about that too much. But again, that's one for another time, I think. And as a result of this, I spend much less time sorting and editing photos, which has to be good, right? And I love photography more now than ever. What's not to love, eh? And another little side effect to this is I spend my entire life looking around, finding interesting things. Yeah, I really do this. And I consider this to be a gift, because it's opened my eyes to so many things I might have never noticed. Wherever I am, I'm always looking around trying to find interesting things that will make an interesting photo. And quite often I might just take a little snap with my phone. I hate that term, but it works here. I might just take a little snap with my phone or something and have a think about it. And if I like what I'm thinking about, I'll come back and take I'm not going to say real photo, take a more considered photo with a camera. And that's what I do. Right, New section. Want to know more about me and what I do? Well, why wouldn't you? Yeah, this is a quick plug for me and what I do. Well, you found this podcast, so I want to tell you about the podcast website, photographyexplainedpodcast.com. And I have another photography website, rickmcavoyphotography.com, where I write blog posts about my photographs of buildings and lots of other good photography stuff. And on my courses page, you'll find my course, How to Become a Real Estate Photographer. And I also have a YouTube channel where I talk about my podcast and my blog and anything photography related that's on my mind. Just type Rick McAvoy into YouTube and you'll soon find me. Okay, enough of the self-promotion. Some thoughts from the last episode. Well, it was the 2024 highlights and I really enjoyed this episode, so I'm going to do this again in 2025 and I'm going to try and capture the best moments of 2025 as I go along, so when I get to the end of the year, it's all done for me. What a good idea, Rick. Next episode. At the time of writing this episode, I don't know. I really don't know. So make sure you follow, subscribe, or whatever it is you can do to make sure you get the next episode, which will be, well, it'll be a surprise for you and it'll be a surprise for me because I genuinely don't know. See, I've had a couple of weeks off and a lot of the things that I had planned for 2025, I've decided are boring and rubbish. I'm not going to do them. So any ideas? Give me a shout. Let me know. Tell me what you think. All right, I'm done. Blimey, this was meant to be a short episode. Oh, well, it isn't, but that's fine. I've said what I wanted to say. And a lot of things came to my mind as I was recording this episode, which weren't in my script, which is good stuff as far as I'm concerned. Right, if you got a question you'd like me to answer, which will help me with the next episode, won't it? Because I've got nothing at the moment. Or if you just want to say hi, email me, sales@rickmcavoyphotography.co.uk, or visit the podcast website, as I said earlier, photographyexplainedpodcast.com/start. And you can even text me from the podcast feed. However you want to get in touch, get in touch. It's always lovely to hear from my dear listeners. Okay, this episode, it was brought to you by a coffee which I consumed before I settled down in my homemade acoustically cushioned recording emporium. This is a late morning recording which will be followed by a cheese and pickle sandwich, no crisps. I've been Rick McAvoy. Thanks again very much for listening to my small but perfectly formed podcast, it says here, and for giving me 27-ish minutes of your valuable time. Now, after I've edited out the mistakes and the other bad stuff, this episode will be, about 23, 24 minutes long, I think. Thanks for listening. Cheers from me, Rick. My brand new course, How to Become a Real Estate Photographer, straight talking advice for beginners to get you making money quickly and build a career, is available to buy now. Find out more at rickmcavoyphotography.com/courses.